Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving deep into Seneca's moral letters to Lucilius.
Yeah.
Now these letters are really more like mini essays
Mm-hmm.
from Seneca to his friend Lucilius,
Right.
and they're packed with advice on how to live a better life.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he blends Stoic philosophy with practical wisdom, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't just talk about the abstract concepts,
Right.
he gives you real-world advice on how to deal with grief,
Uh-huh.
find peace of mind,
Yeah.
and even how to handle wealth and success.
Right. So it's not just for philosophy buffs, it's for anyone who wants to improve themselves.
Absolutely.
And even though these letters were written centuries ago,
Mm-hmm.
they're surprisingly relevant to our lives today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We still struggle with the same things people did back then.
Yeah.
Fear, anxiety, the desire for more stuff, the search for meaning.
Right.
Seneca offers some timeless solutions to those challenges.
Okay, so before we jump in, can you give us a quick overview of the main themes we'll be exploring?
Sure, Seneca covers a lot of ground, but some of the key themes include the importance of virtue and reason,
Okay.
living in accordance with nature, dealing with adversity and death, the power of friendship, and of course, the pursuit of wisdom.
Sounds like a recipe for a good life.
It really is. And what's remarkable is that Seneca doesn't just preach these ideas.
Right.
He shows us how to put them into practice.
All right, well, let's get started. I'm really curious to hear what Seneca has to say about living a virtuous life. Where do we begin?
Well, right from the start, Seneca emphasizes that a virtuous life is the only true path to happiness.
Okay.
In one of his early letters, he writes, "There is no good for man except what makes him just temperate, brave, and free."
So basically, being a good person, I.S. the good life.
Exactly. It's not about what you have, it's about who you are.
Okay.
And he goes on to explain how virtue leads to inner peace and tranquility,
Right.
which are ultimately more valuable than any external possessions.
I can see how that would be true. But it's easier said than done right. How do we actually become more virtuous?
Seneca offers some really practical advice on that.
Okay.
He stresses the importance of self-awareness,
Uh-huh.
examining our own thoughts and actions. He says, above all, keep a close watch on your mind, for it is inclined to stray.
So it's like we need to be constantly checking in with ourselves, making sure we're on the right path.
Right, and he also emphasizes the importance of reason.
Okay.
He believed that we should use our logic and reasoning to guide our choices and actions, not just our emotions.
So it's about thinking things through carefully, not just reacting impulsively.
Precisely. And this idea of reason leads us to another one of Seneca's key themes, living in accordance with nature.
Okay. I've heard that phrase before, but what does it actually mean in this context?
For Seneca, it means aligning our lives with the natural order of things.
Okay.
It's about understanding our place in the universe
Right.
and living in a way that's harmonious with that.
So it's not just about going for walks in the park.
Well, that's part of it,
Okay.
but it's also about recognizing that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. It's about accepting the things we can't control, like death, and focusing on what we can control, like our own thoughts and actions.
That makes sense. But how does this idea of living in accordance with nature actually play out in our daily lives?
Well, for one thing, Seneca argues that it leads to a simpler life.
Right.
He believed that we often create unnecessary suffering for ourselves by chasing after things that don't truly matter,
Yeah.
like wealth and status.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need more, more, more.
Right.
But Seneca seems to be saying that true happiness lies in contentment, in appreciating what we already have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even suggests that poverty can be a blessing in disguise
Wow.
because it forces us to focus on what's truly important.
That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
It goes against everything we're taught in our society.
It does, but it's a powerful reminder that our worth isn't tied to our material possessions.
So Seneca is challenging us to rethink our priorities, to focus on inner peace and virtue instead of chasing external rewards.
He certainly is, and this leads us to another key theme that runs throughout his letters.
Okay.
Dealing with adversity and even death.
Okay, that sounds a bit heavy. What does Seneca have to say about these tough topics?
Well, he acknowledges that life is full of challenges, but he encourages us to view them as opportunities
Okay.
for growth and learning. He famously said, "Fire is the test of gold adversity of strong men."
So it's like facing adversity is a way to refine ourselves, to become stronger and more resilient.
Exactly, and he even applies this mindset to death.
Wow.
He says, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man."
Wow, that's a powerful statement. It seems like Seneca is saying that we should embrace life fully without being held back by the fear of what might happen in the future.
That's a great way to put it. He believed that by accepting death as a natural part of life, we can actually live more freely and courageously.
So it's about focusing on the present moment, on making the most of the time we have.
Exactly. And he even suggests that we should prepare for death.
Wow.
By living a virtuous life so that when it comes, we can face it with tranquility.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Right.
It seems like Seneca is turning the whole idea of death on its head. Instead of something to be feared, it becomes a motivator to live a meaningful life.
You've got it. And this brings us to another important theme, the power of friendship.
Okay, so how does friendship fit into this idea of living a good life?
Well, Seneca believed that true friendship is essential for our growth and well-being. He said, "The good things which belong to prosperity are to be wished, but the good things which belong to adversity are to be admired."
So real friends are there for us, not just when things are good, but also when we're going through tough times.
Absolutely. And he also stressed the importance of choosing friends wisely, seeking out those who share our values,
right,
and who can challenge us to become better people.
It's about surrounding ourselves with people who support our journey towards a virtuous life.
Right. And Seneca provides lots of practical advice on how to build and maintain these kinds of relationships.
This is all so fascinating, but it's a lot to take in. Can you remind me what some of the key takeaways are so far?
Sure. We've talked about how a virtuous life is the foundation of true happiness. How reason and living in accordance with nature can guide us.
Right.
How we can overcome adversity and even embrace death.
Right.
And the importance of cultivating strong friendships.
Wow, that's quite a lot, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this deep dive into Seneca's ideas.
Me too. He has so much wisdom to offer, and it's amazing how relevant it still is today.
I completely agree. I'm eager to hear what else he has to say.
Well, there's much more to explore, including his thoughts on wisdom and the pursuit of knowledge. Let's dive into that next.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with Seneca, from virtue to friendship. But I'm really curious to hear what he has to say about wisdom.
Okay.
It feels like a theme that ties everything together.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
For Seneca, the pursuit of wisdom is central to living a good life.
Okay.
He saw it as an ongoing process, a journey rather than a destination.
So it's not like you just wake up one day and bam, you're wise.
Not quite. Seneca believed it takes constant effort, self-reflection, and a willingness to learn from our experiences and from others.
Kind of like what we're doing right now, digging into these letters.
Absolutely.
But what did he actually say about how we acquire wisdom?
Well, he places a lot of emphasis on philosophy as a tool for developing wisdom.
Okay.
In one letter, he writes, "Philosophy is not a subject for popular consumption. It is not devised to entertain or to win applause. It is a serious pursuit concerned with the conduct of life, the discovery of truth, and the perfection of character."
So it's not just an intellectual exercise.
Right.
It's about using philosophy to shape who we are and how we live.
Exactly. And for Seneca, that meant studying the works of great thinkers.
Right.
Examining their ideas and applying them to our own lives.
He definitely walks the walk in these letters.
Yeah.
He constantly references philosophers and historical figures, using their stories as examples. And so it's like he's saying, look, these wise people figured some things out. Let's see what we can learn from them.
Yeah, and he encourages us to do the same.
Right.
He believed that we can learn from anyone, regardless of their social status or background.
Right.
He once wrote, "Every new acquaintance should be a source of instruction."
So it's about keeping an open mind and being willing to learn from anyone who has something valuable to teach us that resonates with me.
Me too. It's a great reminder to stay humble and to never stop seeking knowledge.
So what are some specific things Seneca suggests we do to cultivate wisdom?
He talks a lot about the importance of self-reflection, of examining our own thoughts and actions to identify areas where we can improve. He famously said, "If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not a change of scene, but a change of soul."
Wow, that's powerful. It's about looking inward rather than trying to change our external circumstances.
Precisely. And he also stresses the importance of living in the present moment, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
That's a key tenet of Stoicism,
Yeah.
being fully engaged in the now.
Exactly. Seneca believed that true happiness and peace of mind come from focusing on what we can control,
Right.
which is our own thoughts and actions in the present moment.
It makes sense, but it's so easy to get caught up in the past or anxieties about the future.
He acknowledges that it's a challenge, but he offers some practical tips for staying grounded in the present.
Okay.
One of my favorites is his advice to begin each day as if it were a new life.
I love that it's like giving ourselves a fresh start every day. A
Right.
chance to approach life with a renewed perspective.
Right. And he also encourages us to practice gratitude, to appreciate the good things in our lives no matter how small.
That's something I've been trying to do more of lately, just taking a moment to be thankful for the simple things. It does make a difference.
He believed that gratitude can help us to shift our focus away from what we lack and towards what we have.
It's about cultivating contentment, which seems to be a recurring theme for Seneca.
It definitely is. He saw contentment as a key ingredient for happiness and a natural outcome of living in accordance with nature.
Okay, so we've got self-reflection, living in the present, gratitude, and contentment. Any other wisdom nuggets from Seneca?
Well, he also emphasizes the importance of learning from our mistakes.
Okay.
He saw failure not as something to be ashamed of, but as an opportunity to learn and grow. He once said, "Every new mistake is a new lesson learned."
That's a great way to look at it. It takes the pressure off and encourages us to embrace our imperfections.
Exactly. And he also believed that we should be willing to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions, to be open to new ideas and perspectives.
He's encouraging us to be lifelong learners, to never stop growing and evolving.
Precisely. And this ties back to his belief in the power of philosophy.
Okay.
He saw philosophy not as a static set of rules, but as a dynamic process of inquiry and self-discovery.
So it's not just about reading books. It's about actively engaging with ideas,
Right.
questioning them,
Right.
and figuring out what works for us.
And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of Seneca's writing,
Okay.
his thoughts on wealth and success.
Okay, I'm curious to hear what a Roman philosopher has to say about money and status that seems pretty relevant to our modern world, right?
Absolutely. And Seneca's views on wealth are surprisingly nuanced.
Right.
He didn't condemn wealth outright,
Right.
but he cautioned against becoming too attached to it.
So it's not about being poor, it's about having the right relationship with money.
Exactly. He believed that wealth could be a tool for good, but it could also be a source of corruption and unhappiness if not handled properly.
I can see how that would be true. Money can bring a lot of freedom and opportunity, but it can also create greed and envy.
And Seneca was very aware of that danger. He once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor."
Right.
He's getting at the idea that true wealth lies in contentment, in appreciating what we have, rather than constantly striving for more.
That's a powerful message, especially in our consumer-driven society. It's like he's saying that happiness comes from within, not from external possessions.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of using wealth wisely.
Right.
Not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others.
So it's about being generous and using our resources to make a positive impact on the world.
Right. And he believed that true success is measured not by how much money we have,
Right.
but by how virtuously we live our lives.
That's a pretty radical departure from how we typically define success today. But I can see how it would lead to a more fulfilling life in the long run.
Absolutely. Seneca was challenging us to redefine what it means to be successful, to prioritize character and virtue over wealth and status.
This is all so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to understand why Seneca's writings have resonated with people for centuries.
Me too. His ideas are timeless and offer so much guidance for navigating the challenges of life.
I'm eager to hear more. So we've been talking about Seneca's views on wisdom, wealth, and success, all big topics. But there's one thing that keeps popping up that I want to dig into a little deeper. It's this idea of living in accordance with nature
Right.
that he talks about so much. It feels really central to his philosophy.
You're absolutely right. It's a core concept in Stoicism, and Seneca really brings it to life in his letters.
Right.
He's not just talking about taking nature walks.
Right.
Those are good too.
Right.
It's more about understanding the natural order of things and finding our place within it.
Okay, so it's bigger than just appreciating trees and sunsets, although I do love a good sunset. But what does it actually look like to live in harmony with nature in our daily lives?
Right.
Seneca's life was pretty different from ours after all.
Oh, that's true, but the principles he lays out are surprisingly applicable even today.
Okay.
One key aspect is accepting what we can't control.
Yeah.
Seneca reminds us that so much of life is beyond our power.
Yeah.
The weather, other people's actions, even our own eventual death.
Right.
Trying to control these things only leads to frustration and anxiety.
That's so true. I know I've wasted a lot of energy worrying about things that I can't do anything about.
Yeah.
But what are we supposed to do? Instead, just surrender to whatever happens.
Not quite. Seneca isn't advocating for passivity.
Okay.
Instead, he says we should focus our energy on what we can control.
Okay.
Our own thoughts, our actions, our responses to events.
Right.
This is where our true power lies.
So it's about choosing our attitude even when things are tough.
Exactly.
That makes sense, but I think it takes a lot of practice to get there.
It definitely does, and that's where things like self-awareness, reason, and the pursuit of virtue come in. These are the tools Seneca gives us to help master our inner world,
Right.
which ultimately allows us to navigate the outer world more effectively.
It's almost like building up a kind of inner resilience, so we're not so easily thrown off course by external events.
Exactly, and that resilience allows us to face challenges with more clarity and courage.
Mm-hmm.
Seneca even applies this to the fear of death, which was a major preoccupation for people in his time.
Right.
He argues that by accepting death as a natural part of life, we can actually live more fully in the present.
I'm starting to see how all these ideas fit together. Living in accordance with nature isn't just about being outdoorsy. It's about aligning our inner world with the reality of how things are, including the good and the bad.
Right, and that alignment, that sense of being in harmony with the universe, brings a kind of peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances. That's what Seneca sees as true happiness.
That's a pretty powerful idea. It's like finding a sense of inner peace that can't be taken away no matter what life throws at you.
Right. And it's not something we achieve overnight. It's a journey that requires ongoing effort and self-reflection. But Seneca offers us a roadmap in these letters, along with encouragement and inspiration every step of the way.
Well, we've only scratched the surface of what Seneca has to offer in these moral letters to Lucilius, but I feel like we've uncovered some real gems today.
Me too. It's amazing how much wisdom is packed into these personal letters written almost 2,000 years ago.
And what's really struck me is how relevant they still are today. We're still wrestling with the same questions about how to live a good life, how to find happiness, how to deal with challenges.
Right.
Seneca provides some timeless answers.
Absolutely. He reminds us that true happiness isn't about external circumstances. It's about cultivating inner strength, virtue, and a deep understanding of our place in the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder: what does living in accordance with nature mean to you? And how can you apply Seneca's wisdom to your own life right here, right now? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mind of Seneca. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom and keep striving to live a good